because of the amount of time they're handing these young African American Latino men.
20, 30, 40, 50
without
years.
parole. You know, that's the thing too, without parole. The federal system, there's no parole in the federal system. So it's hard to go into a federal prison and tell a guy, get your GED, when he's got 80 years without the possibility of parole, which means he'll do 74 years. And if he gets good behavior. And so a kid that's 19, a prime example, there's a kid in the Coleman Correctional Federal System outside of Orlando, the largest federal prison in the state, in the country, federal prison. I kept staring at this kid. I was speaking there a couple of years ago, and he came up to me and said, hi, you know my uncle. And I said, who's your uncle? He told me his uncle, and me and his uncle were in prison together when we were kids.
Wow.
And I said, wow. I said, what are you in for? So he told me. And he was only about 29. He went in 10 years earlier when he was 19. But I could see it was just dawning on him that he now realized after 10 years that his life was finished. He had life without the possibility of parole. Went in at 19 years old. And for those first 10 years, at 19, he was still a kid. He's playing basketball, running around the prison, having fun. And now it dawned on him that life is over. And he said something that almost brought me to tears. He said, could you go by my grandmother's house and tell her to get me a lawyer? Now, his grandma lives in the housing projects, raising her great-grandchildren. And I couldn't tell the kid that his grandma ain't got no money. I just had to say, sure, I'll go talk to her. So what I do when I talk to folks, I try to tell them in my day, 35, 40 years ago, most states were spending tens of millions in those days on rehabilitation. But those days are over with. It's punishment.
Put a man, lock him up.
Lock him up and that's it.
See you when you go.
That's it. And it is true when people scream, oh, you're exaggerating. There's a plan in every state for the 17-year-old who hasn't even been born yet. The prison is being planned. You know, and the person hasn't been born yet. So you don't build a prison just because you say in any state, oh my God, we got a problem. We got to build a prison. Those things are thought of way in advance. We know from third grade, when they're third grade, where they're going to end up. Mm-hmm. And so we gotta house them somewhere. So it's a tough thing to answer because on one level, I can speak from my experiences when you could get out of parole and make parole, and they had programs to help you. I went to college in prison. I got an associate arts degree, a 2-year degree in prison while I was in the penitentiary. Those days are over with now in the prisons. But what I do, I said, listen, you've got to try to discover or rediscover your own humanity while you're here because sometimes these things are cyclical. Sometimes political winds change and then parole and stuff starts again. So you got to be ready to be a better person if those things change. So get your GED. Try to take college courses. Try to advance and change your life while you're here. Otherwise, you're going to be a dinosaur. You know, and the world is going to pass you by. And if you do have a sentence that means that you have a sentence that says you can make parole, you have to somehow try to better yourself. And it's an interesting thing, what I tell really young guys, real tough guys are leaders, not followers. Mm-hmm. So the minute one of your buddies say, hey, let's start this prison ride, let's go stab this guy, let's beat that guard up. If you're a real tough guy, you can say, man, I'm finished with that. I ain't doing that. I said, so the difference between admitting what you are, a leader or a follower, I said, that's the first thing. And then the last thing is that everybody has to look in the mirror. In the solitude of their prison, he or she has to look in that mirror and say, you know what? I'm finished. And it's almost dealing with a drug addict. You know you can't help them until they're ready to get help.
Right.
And sometimes in the prison situation, he or she has to want to change. And then when they do, you got to have things set up for them to do it. Now that may say unfair. Somebody said, well, why should I have to, I can't even send my own kid to college, and these prisoners get to go for college for free in the prison. But who would you rather live next door to you? Or somebody who's come out of the penitentiary who's changed and a better human being and wants to be a productive member of society, or somebody who's still pissed off? You know, so unfair as it may sound, but that's the country we live in.
Well, we certainly appreciate that you looked in that mirror.
You found your voice.
I did.
Because just imagine if we didn't have your voice out here doing what you do. Least among saints, the Obama effect. We will look for all of those things. Charles Dutton, we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, my man. Thank you.